All right, we are back here on 99 Pod. It's not 1999 anymore. And speaking of that, because it's not, we in 2023, about to be 2024. We have no undefeated teams in the NFL right now. And we want to talk about what does that mean, big picture in the NFL. And Zach, I would love to do the honors here, right? Because I have a takeaway. I think that defenses today has intercepted the offense in today's game right now, this year in the National Football League. And the reason why I bring that up is because you look at everything. We just talked about the Browns and the Jets. They won that game because of defense, despite having a third string XFL quarterback, a backup quarterback in Zach Wilson that has looked anemic. They were able to win that game because the games are won in all three phases: special teams, defense. But defense is being more to the forefront today. You know, you talk about the Browns, they have a historical defense. They stop the Steelers offense, which, that's not a praise, because they offense stinks, but they stopped, Derrick Henry. They stopped, the offenses that they played. They stopped the 49ers, who had a team firing on all cylinders. They stopped these guys and shut them down. All these running backs they played thus far, they stopped them. They shut them down. Najee, Jalen Warren, all these guys they stopped. You talk about, the Raiders, for crying out loud. The Raiders, they're 3-3 right now. And that's while creating the least explosive plays in the whole entire NFL. Matter of fact, yesterday or 2 days ago was the first time that they scored 20 points or more. And yet they are 3-3. That's because their defense made some plays. They intercepted the young quarterback Jordan Love a couple times a couple weeks ago, right? They won the game against New England by sacking Mac Jones. Defenses are coming back, okay? When you talk about the Steelers, who are 3-2, if I'm not mistaken, that's because of defense, clearly. Their defense won them the game at Cleveland or at home against Cleveland. Their defense won them games. They won them the game against the Ravens. Defenses are back and they are intercepting the offenses. And there's a reason why I think so, right? And what does this mean for the NFL? It means that, even though we talk about these quarterbacks, the team with the elite defense and the quarterback is going to win games. And there's more parity because of it. Because the defenses across the league had to survive. We was talking about the last couple of years, this decade, being transformed into this high-octane offense like the Chiefs, the Bengals. And it's a survival tactic for adaptation. You got to survive. It's bad enough these quarterbacks is getting calls. You can't even touch the quarterback. You can't even touch the wide receiver. Pass interference. That should be changed. It shouldn't be no spot foul in the NFL. It should be like college, 15 yards, not no spot foul. How the hell am I supposed to guard this cat? And these guys getting all the calls, these route runners and all that. They had to survive. So what they did was they brought out this too high shell safety look to take away the explosive plays, testing your patience to methodically move the ball down the field, testing your willingness and your smarts and your IQ to be smart enough to dump the ball off and just try to drive down the field. And that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing defenses intercepting the offense now, and now the game has changed. And that's why when you talk about big picture, who is a team that can win the Super Bowl? I don't know. Maybe the team with the elite defense this time around. And that's my take.
I definitely think you're onto something there with the defense, and it's definitely been noticeable to me just how much a lot of these offenses have struggled at the early mark of this season. And I feel like maybe some of it has to do with the fact we remember back in 2011 when the league was threatening to have a lockout and starting the season a little bit late. And a lot of that conversation and a lot of the things that were holding that up were players. They didn't want 2-a-day practices anymore. They didn't want like as much going on in those practices, as much padded practices. And, these owners, like, that's kind of why they added the 17th game, 18th week as well. The players were like, you know what, as long, like, you could add a game, that's fine. As long as we don't just have to practice more and work more, like, we're fine with that. Go for it. And it definitely, I think, has contributed to these offenses, especially early on in the season, like at this point, just looking very sloppy. And I agree. It is very noticeable, and you're going to need a good defense if you're going to want to win a championship along with that quarterback.
Yo, you talk about the Jets real quickly, Zach. They were out. They were without their top two corners, and DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner, and they found a way to get 3 interceptions. Should have been 4, and win that game. I mean, that tells you a lot. Yeah. And then be giving quarterbacks trouble. Patrick Mahomes, 3 interceptions or 2 interceptions. Josh Allen, 3 interceptions. Jalen Hurts, 3 interceptions. These are elite quarterbacks we are talking about here, throwing these amounts of interceptions, making them look like they don't know what they're doing out there. Defenses are back.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to my point with the Chargers earlier. Is like Justin Herbert, he's been really good since he's entered the league, but the Chargers haven't won much, and a lot of that just has to do with their defense. Same thing with USC in college football. Caleb Williams, he's human. He's going to have a bad game here and there like he did on Saturday against Notre Dame, but when the USC defense is just giving up 48 points, they're not going to win many games like that. One more thing I wanted to mention, though, in regards to this question, I found it very interesting, and I thought this question was appropriate too, because literally the last 2 primetime games we've watched, right? It was the Giants and the Bills on Sunday night, and then last night's game between the Cowboys and the Chargers. And it's like both games were awful. Both games were not pleasant to the viewer, but at the end of the day, late in the game, it was up for grabs, and we were, as viewers, glued to the TV on the edge of our seats because it was a competitive game, and we didn't know what was going to happen. And I feel like with the NFL, this is kind of exactly how they want it with the salary cap and how that's set up. Like, it is very difficult to win in this league for a sustained amount of time. And the goal for Roger Goodell is to just want you and us as the viewer to be invested and as watching as many of these games as possible. And when those games are competitive, that's when he's really going to drive on that. So I think, especially compared to years past, the league today is definitely a lot more competitive. Like we saw with the Jets and the Niners and the Eagles, like you just can never really rack up anything as an automatic given win any given Sunday. They say that for a reason. And especially early, like now, like when these offenses are struggling a little bit, it could be anyone's game at any time.
Yeah, and then the explosive plays is going down. Like, of course, we'll have, explosive plays occasionally. Like, we'll see the Eagles have a bomb shot play to A.J. Brown and all that. But look at the Bengals. Look at the Chiefs. The Chiefs had to literally adapt their whole entire offense once they lost Tyreek Hill, and once they stopped playing Tyreek Hill or started playing Tyreek Hill, taking him away with the shell looks or whatever. So their offense is completely get to your spot, I'll get you the ball fast like that. So we are seeing less explosive plays. Thus, if you like offense, you're probably not going to like to stay up Sunday Night Football and watch the Bills with Josh Allen only putting up a little bit of points. The offense didn't look great, right? The Giants, their defense has not been great at all this year, but the Bills can't get going against them. Like, what's going on? We are going to see more games like that. We're going to have low scoring games despite having the elite quarterback power in those games because the defenses are trying to take away the big play. You have to adapt in this world. That's why the show is called It's Not 1999 anymore. And right now, the defenses has definitely intercepted the offense, and that's why we got good team football all around.
One last question I wanted to ask you, and I agree with you 100%. Like when you mentioned it's going to be the teams with the great quarterback and the great defenses that are most likely going to be there at the end of the day. Like, are there any teams in particular that you're really looking at and like focusing on as someone who could like fit that prototype?
I'm thinking in my mind, when you talk about a great defense and a great offense, right? You're probably going to have to look at maybe a team. There's a couple teams, right? We could start off with the Chiefs in the AFC. Now, I don't classify their defense as being great, but it's good enough, as we've seen the last couple years, to win Super Bowls. And, of course, you have Patrick Mahomes, you have Andy Reid's play calling brilliance, and they're very physical rushing the rock with Isaiah Pacheco. There'd be a team in the AFC that comes to mind. Now, the Dolphins, right? And it's funny that I bring up the Dolphins because they don't have a great stout, shut them out defense. But I do think with the offense that they have and the defense, if the defense can generate turnovers and play zone once my guy, what's the name, comes back, because Vic Fangio, he likes to take away the big play. He hasn't been doing it a lot this year, but Jalen Ramsey, when he comes back, which is going to be sooner rather than we thought, I think they can potentially put themselves in that conversation with the Chiefs because they should be getting some reinforcements on that defense, a shutdown corner in Jalen Ramsey to go along with that high octane offense. When you talk about the NFC, we're talking about the 49ers. We're talking about the Eagles once they get everything patched up. We're talking about even the Browns in the AFC. Believe it or not, what the Browns proved to me, and we talk about the 49ers and their perspective, we ain't talking about the Browns' perspective. The biggest question going into this year was always about Deshaun Watson and his return to form. But we never knew this defense was going to be that great. Like, I knew it was going to be good. I called them the most underrated team in the offseason for a reason, primarily due to that side of the ball. But now it's like, all right, Deshaun Watson, you don't have to be Deshaun Watson no more. If you can be Jimmy Garoppolo, which is take care of the daggone football and don't make errant throws, this team could be a team that could make a Super Bowl because of that defense. So those are the teams that I'm thinking about right now. The Lions as well. You don't have to be shut down. You don't have to have the best players. But if you could be scrappy, generate takeaways, and your offense could do what they need to do on that side of the ball, then you should be fine and you should be contending for a Super Bowl. I think it's wide open. And that's why, big picture, I'm thinking that we may have a team that's going to win a championship that we didn't think was going to win one when we talked about this topic in the offseason.
It's funny you brought up the Lions because that's actually the team I was going to look at. And it's so interesting to me. It's like, I don't want to overreact over just a couple games, but I'm starting to like ask myself, is their defense like better than their offense? Because their defense has been playing really well, only holding Tampa Bay to 6 points on Sunday. And it's like Hutchinson is obviously a monster, slowly turning himself into one of the best defensive players in the league. And a big, like, I'll be honest, part of the reason why I was a little hesitant to go all in on Detroit this offseason was because of their draft. Like, I still didn't love the Jahmyr Gibbs pick, especially with how they're utilizing him. And they took Jack Campbell, an inside linebacker, with their second pick of the first round. But they made up for it later in the draft by getting Laporta, who seems to be like the best tight end in this draft. And then they also took the safety out of Alabama, Brian Branch. I know he's hurt now, but he's made a major impact. It's almost like if you would have told Lion fans that they drafted Laporta and Branch with their first two picks, and then they waited on Gibbs and Campbell, then the draft would have made a ton of sense. And their free agent signings in the secondary as well. Cam Sutton, a former Steeler, I've always been a big fan of his, and he has made a major impact as a lockdown corner in that secondary. Anzalone's a good player. Like, I think the Lions defense too, like, we got to start giving them their respect. They've been just as big of a part of this turnaround as their offense has been.
Yeah, definitely. A team like Jacksonville also comes to mind. They shut down Kansas City's offense. They shut down the Bills' offense. So they've been doing a pretty good job. I know CJ Stroud, kind of tore them up. But if they can have those moments that they had against the Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, then their offense should be good enough to win them a playoff game or two or potentially get to a Super Bowl. I predicted them to get there. I still believe that, but they got to show me more offensively. But defensively, they could hold up. When you look at the bottom standings, I'm looking at the bottom standings right now. I have it in front of me. The Patriots, their defense is terrible now. With all them injuries, they 1-5. Right? The Vikings, terrible defense. That's why they only won one game. Now, 2 games they won, if I'm not mistaken. You got the Titans, 2-4. Their defense is not the same defense. Now, I like their defensive line to stop the running game, but they can't stop the pass. Listen, you have to have a good defense in today's NFL. And I noticed that trend because I'm looking at this and I'm thinking about this last night. I'm like, wait, hold up. We are starting to see less explosive plays. We are starting to see defenses more than ever. Not maybe, this was a norm back then, but it stopped. It was about the offense and the offense winning Super Bowls. It was for a minute, the last couple of years, offenses was winning Super Bowls. Now it's back to the basics. It's back to 1999. Defenses win championships, and we are seeing that right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Zach. Any thoughts on your end? Big picture things? Any takeaways? Or are we good?
I would just say, like, in terms of the overall theme of this segment that we've been doing so far is, like, the game of football, it's so interesting. Like, a lot of things have changed within the last 50 years. The quarterback, you mentioned it, like how much you could hit them, the pass interference calls being very up in the air. But one thing that hasn't changed is defense, and the fact that if you want to win big in this league, you're going to have to get stops. And I agree with most of the teams you brought up. Like, Kansas City is the main team that comes to mind. Like, I've been very impressed by their defense, and the way it's just kept on improving over the course of the last few years. Spagnuolo has done a great job there. Miami, it's interesting. Like, I think, and we're going to get into this later on in the year when this game gets closer, but like, I think for Miami, and I would even put maybe Detroit in the same boat, like getting that number 1 seed in the playoffs is going to be huge, because with Miami, the only question we have about their offense is, can they do it maybe in the cold in January, opposed to doing it nonchalantly on a regular season Sunday. But if they do get home field, they might not even have to worry about that, getting able to play in that nice South Florida weather. And the same thing goes for Detroit. Like, if the Lions really do have legitimate Super Bowl aspirations, I think they're going to have a much better chance to do that playing in that dome, where we know, like, it doesn't matter who they're playing. They could put up points against anyone in that building, opposed to doing it on the road. So I feel like for those two teams in particular, I know the playoffs they seem like they're really far away, but they're really not. And these games, we're 6 weeks into the season, like, they're already getting very important. I think for those two teams in particular, like Miami and Detroit, every game really matters, because there is a path for them to get the number 1 seed in their respective conferences.
I got one more takeaway. Obviously, MVP conversations are going to start heating up. When you don't have any undefeated teams, it makes that debate more intriguing, because normally you will pick the guy, let's say, for example, a team went undefeated or won 10, 11 games before they lost. That quarterback of that team will be the favorite to win an MVP. A lot of people was talking about Brock Purdy potentially being the front runner. I never bought into that, but most people were saying, maybe it's Brock Purdy, but on Sunday, he had a golden opportunity to show his value to the team. Debo goes down. CMC goes down. He had an opportunity to show his value to the team, and he went 12 for 27, and it's like, yeah, George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk was still there. Those two guys will be the best player or the best 2 players on the Ravens who beat the Browns the week before. So it shows the value, because how did the Ravens, out of all the teams that Cleveland played, was able to put that many points on that defense and look that good, right? You never asked yourself that, Zach. I did, and I said to myself, one reason only. Lamar Jackson offers you that outside of structure upside, where, okay, I can stop the running game, but I got to respect Lamar Jackson. That's something that Brock Purdy doesn't have. Everything has to be in structure. Things have to be right. The players have to be on the field. And we saw him get exposed a little bit on Sunday. And I think it's going to make these conversations more intriguing. With things this close, if it continues to be close, do we kind of go for, okay, we gave the quarterbacks these MVPs forever, right? Do we go wide receiver here? If Tyreek Hill is still on that pace where he's at right now to get 2,000, does he get the MVP? Does CMC, did he show his value not being on the field, getting knocked out on Sunday and the 49ers losing? Is it going to be a running back, quarterback? Who is it going to be? Wide receiver? I think the parity in the league right now makes the MVP conversations that more intriguing.
Absolutely. And like, for me, man, I still can't really give you a great answer that I would feel good about this award. Right now, Patrick Mahomes and Tua are like co-favorites for it, and I could see ultimately either guy coming away with it. But yeah, like, I don't feel great. I think it's a wide open award at this point.
Absolutely.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, or leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.